If you'd asked me a week ago how my family felt about me, I'd have said, "Oh, they love me," right after they loved my money. I guess I just didn't realize how disposable I really was until my brother uploaded a carousel of vacation photos on Instagram with the caption, "Family time! Blessed! Family time." Right. As in, everyone but me. I remember staring at my phone like it had just delivered a death sentence. The first photo was all of them: Mom, Dad, my sister Kara, her husband Jason, even Great-Aunt Nancy, who once called my cooking edible-ish, posing in front of some fancy oceanfront resort in Key West. Matching outfits, matching smiles, matching total lack of interest in telling me they were going. In the next shot, they were clinking margarita glasses. Third photo, Dad was grinning in a golf cart, sunburned as a boiled lobster. Fourth, Mom holding a sign that read, "Good vibes only." I scrolled through every smug, glossy picture, feeling like I was trying to decode the part where they'd remembered to include me. Maybe I'd missed the text. Maybe the invite was buried under some old grocery receipt. Maybe. Nope. There was no invite. No text. Just an entire week of my family living their best lives while I, Nathan, was here paying their rent, their cell bills, and whatever else they pretended they couldn't afford. The final photo was the one that did it, Dad holding up a giant seafood platter with the caption, "Treating the fam, couldn't ask for better company." Like I'd died and nobody bothered to send flowers. So, naturally, I did what any rational person would do: I called Dad. He picked up on the third ring, sounding irritated that I was interrupting his vacation serotonin. "Hey, Dad," I said, trying to keep my voice neutral. "Where are you?" He sighed like I was the one making things awkward. "We're in Florida. Relaxing." "Florida," I repeated. "The whole family?" A pause. Then, "Well, yeah? And you didn't think to invite me?" There was a beat of silence so thick it could have clogged an artery. Finally, he said, calm as a Zen monk, "Nathan, we didn't want you there." Like he was reading the weather report. I waited, thinking he'd elaborate. He didn't. "Didn't want me there," I echoed, just to be sure I hadn't had a stroke. "Why?" "You're always working," he said. "You bring the energy down." My brain did that cartoon thing where the gears grind to a halt. I was working because I was wiring them $2,500 every single month. So they could keep the electricity on, pay Mom's car note, and afford exactly this sort of luxury getaway. "You realize," I said slowly, "I'm paying most of your bills." Dad gave a little snort, like I was reciting stand-up material. "Well, don't make it a big deal, Nathan. It's not personal." Oh, it was personal. And also financial. And also, apparently, a free pass to treat me like a spare tire they didn't need as long as the car was running. "I send you money," I said, my voice rising. "Every month. $2,500. And you think it's fine to leave me out because I'm always working? The work is what pays for." "Look," he cut in, sounding bored. "Don't be dramatic. We just wanted to enjoy ourselves without tension. Without me." I hung up before I said something I'd regret. Though in hindsight, I probably wouldn't have regretted it at all. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, playing every conversation we'd ever had in my head like a horror movie on repeat. All the times they called me generous. All the times they promised we'd do something special as a family. Once they were caught up on bills. It was never about catching up. It was about bleeding me dry while telling me I was too serious to be invited to the party. I opened my banking app. My thumb hovered over the screen. They didn't want me there? Fine. They could find out what it felt like when I wasn't there financially, either. I didn't sleep much that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that picture of Dad holding a crab leg like he'd discovered fire. By sunrise, my decision was locked in. I got up, brewed the world's angriest cup of coffee, and propped my phone against the toaster so I could watch their vacation videos one more time, just to remind myself why I was about to do what I was about to do. Then I logged into my bank account. The $2,500 transfer was set to process the next morning, automatic, dependable, like I'd been for the past 4 years. I stared at the little toggle switch labeled recurring payment. My thumb hovered over it. One tap. Cancelled. That was the first domino. I clicked over to the shared emergency account, the one Mom always swore she only dipped into for necessities. If those necessities included a luxury resort in Florida, I figured she'd survive without my contributions. I transferred every last cent back to my own checking. It felt like inhaling for the first time in years. Before I could talk myself out of it, I went to my contacts and did the second thing I'd been too scared to do. Blocked Dad. Blocked Mom. Blocked Kara and her husband. Blocked every number labeled home. Then I did something petty, because honestly, I'd earned it. I unfollowed every single one of them on social media. Watching them sip $18 cocktails while calling me ungrateful wasn't exactly enriching my soul. An hour later, my phone lit up with the first barrage of calls. Unknown number. Probably Mom using the hotel landline like she was calling from prison. I didn't pick up. Then came the texts. At first, they were from my parents' numbers. Too stunned to believe I'd really done it. Nathan, call us. This is absurd. Dad, grow up. You're making a scene. Then, apparently realizing I'd blocked them, they recruited the extended family. My phone turned into a guilt trip hotline. First was Aunt Linda, whose only contribution to my life was an annual $5 birthday card. Aunt Linda, your parents are heartbroken. You're overreacting. Then Cousin Mark, who once asked to borrow $1,000 to invest in crypto. Mark, bro, chill. They were just trying to enjoy themselves. Don't cut them off. Oh, but the piece de resistance came around noon, an anonymous text, no name attached, but the writing as familiar as Dad's condescending sigh. Unknown. Pathetic. You're so desperate to feel important that you'd punish your own family. You'll die alone, and you deserve it. I read that one 3 times. Then I laughed, actually doubled over in my kitchen, cackling like a lunatic. Because nothing says, "We love you," quite like predicting your lonely demise the second you stop footing the bill. I took a screenshot of the message. Saved it in a folder labeled Reasons. Because if I ever felt guilty again, I wanted a reminder of exactly what I was cutting out of my life. By the end of the day, I'd received 17 voicemails, a dozen emails, and more passive-aggressive emojis than any grown adult should be able to summon. Every message had the same theme: how could you? Not once did anyone ask me why I did it. Because deep down, they already knew. By the next morning, the guilt campaign had evolved from text messages to in-person ambushes. I should have known someone would eventually show up at my door. But when I opened it and saw Kara standing there, I still felt like I'd been sucker-punched. She looked exactly like she did in those vacation photos. Hair perfect, nails done, sunglasses perched on her head like she was auditioning for a reality show called The Entitled Ones. "Nate," she said, voice soft, like she was here to deliver bad news gently. "We need to talk." I crossed my arms. "About what?" "How you all had a great time without me." Her lips thinned. "Can I come in?" "I don't think that's a good idea," I said. She sighed, this long, exaggerated exhale she'd perfected when we were kids, and she needed everyone to know she was the victim. "Mom's been crying nonstop," she began, like that was supposed to be my problem. "Dad's furious. They feel like you're punishing them." "I am," I said flatly. "Because they've been using me. And apparently I'm such a drag on their precious vacation energy that I wasn't even worth inviting." Kara blinked, surprised I wasn't pretending to be diplomatic. "Don't you think you're overreacting a little?" she tried. "It was just a vacation. Paid for, in part, with my money," I reminded her. "Money they expect every month without fail. You know they needed that break." She pressed, voice tight. "They've been stressed." "Oh, I'm sorry. Has it been hard for them to spend other people's money in between posting beach selfies?" She flinched just a little. "They're your parents." "No," I said, shaking my head. "They're people who think I'm an ATM with a personality disorder." She huffed, frustrated. "So what, this is it? You're cutting them off forever?" You're really okay with watching Mom and Dad struggle because you're mad about a vacation? I felt something in me snap, this old, brittle loyalty that had been cracking for years. Kara, I've been covering their rent, their groceries, Mom's car payments, and every emergency they invented to avoid budgeting. You want to know why they're panicking? Because I was their last safety net. You don't understand, she said, voice quivering now. They don't have the money to. Then you help them, I cut in. If it's so important, you pick up the bills. You wire the transfers. You make sure they're comfortable while they pretend you're their only worthwhile child. She went silent. And that was the moment I realized she wasn't here out of love. She was here to protect her own peace of mind. Because without me bankrolling the family, she might actually be next in line to foot the tab. Her eyes filled with frustrated tears. You're going to regret this, she whispered. I shrugged. Maybe. But at least it'll be my choice, not a consequence of letting them walk all over me. She didn't say goodbye. She just turned and walked down the hall, her heels clicking against the tile in sharp little stabs of judgment. I shut the door and leaned my forehead against it, breathing hard. If I thought Kara's little intervention was going to be the peak of the family meltdown, I was wrong. 2 days later, my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. I almost let it go to voicemail, until a paranoid little voice whispered, what if they finally sent someone reasonable? Spoiler alert, they didn't. It was my father's voice, cold and clipped, like he was delivering a quarterly earnings report. Nathan, he said without preamble, we need to discuss your actions. I didn't bother sitting down. Pretty sure we've discussed them enough. You've put your mother in a terrible state. He continued, ignoring me. She can barely sleep. She's worried sick about how we'll pay the mortgage. Yeah, I said. She probably should have worried about that before she booked a beachfront suite. His voice dropped into that fake calm he always used before unleashing something nasty. I'm calling to give you a chance to reconsider before this goes any further. Further? I echoed. What does that mean exactly? You're being irrational, he snapped. And self-destructive. So, I've contacted your employer. For a second, I couldn't process it. You did what? I called your HR department this morning, he said, like it was perfectly normal to torpedo your child's career over a financial disagreement. Told them you've been unstable, making reckless decisions. I thought they should know. I was so stunned I actually laughed. Wow. That's a new low, even for you. You leave us no choice. He hissed. You're acting like an unhinged child. Maybe losing your job will help you grow up. The call ended before I could respond. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from the realization that they really, truly did not care what damage they caused, as long as they kept the money flowing. I stood there for a full minute, phone still pressed to my ear, before I finally called my boss. David picked up after 2 rings, sounding exactly like the laid-back operations director he was. Hey, Nathan. Everything okay? Not really, I said. I just got off the phone with my father. He said he called you. Said I was having some sort of breakdown. There was a long pause. Then David sighed. Yeah. He did call. My heart plummeted. And I told him we don't discuss employee matters with outside parties, David said flatly. Then I hung up. I let out a shaky breath. Nathan, he continued, his voice softer. I've seen nothing but professionalism from you. I don't know what's going on with your family, but that's none of my business. I'm not concerned, and neither is HR. You're fine. I felt like I could breathe. Thank you, I said, my voice raw. No problem, he said. Take the rest of the day if you need it. I didn't. Instead, I sat down at my kitchen table, opened my laptop, and started drafting messages. Because if they thought a stunt like that would scare me into compliance, they'd clearly forgotten who they were dealing with. I was done trying to be the dutiful son. If they wanted to see how selfish I could be, I'd show them. That night, I sat in my apartment with the lights off, just letting the dark feel like a clean slate. Because something about Dad's phone call, about him reaching into my professional life to yank another lever of control, had finally killed any lingering guilt. I wasn't going to tiptoe anymore. I thought about all the times they told me I was too serious, too sensitive, too much. The times I'd been the afterthought, unless they needed something. Like when my car broke down senior year and I walked 6 miles home from my part-time job, only to hear Dad say, "You need to be more resourceful." Or when Mom called crying about the overdue electricity bill, and I sent money I'd saved from my own rent, then watched them post dinner selfies 2 days later from a steakhouse I couldn't afford. I opened my messages and started typing. Not the half-measured, apologetic text I'd sent in the past when I tried to keep the peace. This time, it was all the things I should have said years ago. First, I texted Mom and Dad directly. "Me. I'm done. For good. I supported you for years. I paid your bills, covered your debts, and let you pretend I didn't matter as long as my money kept showing up. You excluded me from your vacation. You called my boss to sabotage me. I owe you nothing, and I will not fund your life any longer. Don't contact me again." I hit send and felt something unclench in my chest, like I'd been holding my breath since I was 19. Then I texted Kara. "Me. I know you think I'm being cruel, but you've never once stood up for me. You let them use me. You let them talk about me like I was nothing. If you want to help them, you can open your wallet." Next, I opened the group chat with all the cousins and extended relatives who'd spent the last week spamming me with guilt. "Me. I'm not interested in being lectured by people who haven't spoken to me in years unless they want it alone. Don't contact me again." One by one, I blocked every number. The petty part of me wondered if I should leave them unblocked just to watch the meltdown. But the sane part, the part that wanted peace more than drama, won out. When I finally set my phone down, it was past midnight, and my notifications had gone eerily silent. It was the most peaceful silence I'd ever heard. In the morning, there was only one message waiting for me, one final gasp of entitlement before the lights went out for good. Dad had sent it at 3:14 a.m., probably after realizing he couldn't call my boss again to make the mortgage payment appear. "Dad, you've always been a selfish child. We did everything for you. Don't come crawling back when you realize how alone you are." I read it twice, my thumb hovering over delete. And then I wrote back. "Me. Don't worry. I won't." I blocked his number. Then, just for good measure, I deleted the entire thread. Because if they ever wanted to rewrite history, they could do it without my participation. That was the moment it hit me. They weren't devastated because they loved me. They were devastated because their personal ATM had finally installed a PIN code. And this time, I wasn't giving them the number. After I texted Dad that final message, "Don't worry, I won't," you'd think the circus would have packed up and left town. But no. Apparently, when you cut off the family's free-flowing money tap, you don't just get a clean break. You get an encore performance. It started the next day when I logged on to Facebook to check a work message and immediately spotted my name tagged in a post by my cousin Tori. You know, the same cousin who once called me boring because I wouldn't co-sign a car loan for her MLM scheme. Her post was a sanctimonious novella about the importance of family, featuring this gem: "Money isn't everything. Some people forget who was there for them when they were struggling." The comments section was a who's who of relatives I hadn't heard from in years. Wow, so sad. He must be miserable inside. Disgusting. Money can't buy love. He'll regret this when he's old and alone. I scrolled through it, half laughing, half ready to yeet my phone into traffic. Here's the part none of them wanted to say out loud. Money wasn't everything, until they needed it. Then suddenly, my paycheck was the only thing holding the family together, and I was selfish for not wanting to be treated like a 24-hour ATM. I clicked over to Messenger and found a pile of messages waiting for me. Some were from extended family I hadn't seen since high school. "Aunt Sharon. Nathan, honey, can't you just call your parents? They're so upset." "Cousin Luke. Dude, you really put your mom in the hospital with all this drama. Hope you're happy." For a second, my stomach flipped, until I remembered that the last time Mom was in the hospital, it was for a routine checkup she described as near death. because they wouldn't let her bring her emotional support chihuahua inside. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. I wasn't doing this again. I wasn't going to let their guilt trips drag me back to a place where my feelings didn't matter. I opened a blank Facebook status and started typing, my fingers surprisingly steady. For anyone confused, yes, I stopped financially supporting my parents. Yes, I did it after years of covering their expenses, paying their rent, and being treated like an inconvenience. If you think that makes me cruel, feel free to block me. If you want the full story, my inbox is open. But I'm done pretending everything was fine just because it made everyone else comfortable. I hit post and waited. The reaction was instant. Some people sent hearts and messages of support. Good for you. Takes guts to set boundaries. Proud of you, man. Others were predictably outraged. This could have stayed private. Wow, airing family business online? Classy. I didn't regret it for a second. Because for once, I wasn't hiding. I wasn't swallowing it all to keep the peace. I was telling the truth. That afternoon, I got a call from an unknown number. My first instinct was to ignore it, but curiosity got the better of me. It was my old high school friend Mark, voice hesitant. Hey man. Just wanted to say, your post hit me hard. My mom did the same thing. Always needed money but never had time for me. Just, thanks for saying it out loud. I felt something in my chest ease. Thanks, I said. That means a lot. After we hung up, I sat in my kitchen and let myself remember the last decade of silent resentment. The birthdays I spent alone because they couldn't afford a visit, right after they'd gone to Disney with Kara's kids. The times I'd called, needing someone to talk to, only to hear Dad sigh and say, "Can this wait? We're busy." The months when the rent was late because I'd sent every spare dollar to them, thinking maybe if I proved I was good enough, they'd finally treat me like I mattered. But it never worked. It never would. And for the first time, I didn't feel like the villain for wanting something better. I felt like a grown adult who finally stopped begging to be included. By the time the Facebook dust settled, my phone had finally gone quiet. For about 12 hours. Then came the knock on my door. I knew it was her before I even looked through the peephole, because nobody else knocks in that precise, pathetic rhythm. I opened the door an inch. Mom was standing there, dressed like she was auditioning for a sympathy commercial, oversized cardigan, hair slightly undone, eyes puffy in a way that said she'd practiced in the mirror. "Nathan," she whispered, voice trembling. "Can we please talk?" I didn't step aside. "About what?" Her lower lip quivered, and for a moment she looked almost sincere. "We're behind on rent. Your father hasn't been working as much since the business slowed down, and I don't know what we're going to do." I let the silence stretch until she squirmed. "Is that why you're here?" I asked finally. "To see if you could squeeze one last check out of me?" Her hand flew to her chest. "How can you say that?" "Because it's true," I said calmly. "You didn't call to apologize. You didn't call when I stopped sending money. You called when you realized you might have to downsize." Tears welled up in her eyes, but I didn't move. "I'm your mother," she whispered. "I carried you for 9 months. And I paid your mortgage for almost a decade," I said, voice flat. "I guess we're even." She took a shaky breath. "Please, Nathan. Just 1 month. 1. Then we'll figure something out." "Figure something out like what?" I asked. "Another vacation? Another scheme to humiliate me when you thought I'd never stand up for myself?" Her eyes flashed. Just for a split second, the practiced sadness evaporated, and I saw the real expression underneath, annoyance. "You're being cruel," she hissed. "No," I said. "I'm being clear." Her mouth opened and closed, like she was searching for a line that would make me crumble back into the obedient son she could guilt into anything. When it didn't come, she tried again. "You know, your father and we did everything we could for you." I almost laughed. Everything except show up when it mattered. Everything except treat me like a person instead of a wallet. She swallowed hard. "You don't have to do this. You don't have to throw us away over a vacation." "This isn't about the vacation," I said. It's about the fact that you were happy to take my money but couldn't be bothered to treat me with basic decency. It's about the years I spent paying your bills while you made it clear I wasn't really part of the family. You'll regret this, she said, voice rising. I took a deep breath and did something I'd been fantasizing about since I was 22. I stepped back, gripped the edge of the door, and closed it gently in her face. The last thing I heard before it clicked shut was her muffled voice. You're going to end up alone. I locked the deadbolt and leaned my forehead against the door, breathing hard. I thought I'd feel empty. But I didn't. I felt like I'd finally set fire to a bridge I'd been told my whole life I was lucky to cross, when really it was always just a plank over a pit they dug to keep me trapped. 10 minutes later, my phone vibrated. A new text, this time from Kara. Kara, how could you do that to her? She's been crying nonstop. You're heartless. I sat on the couch, staring at the message, thinking about all the birthdays they'd missed. The holidays I'd spent alone. The times I'd sent money I couldn't spare because I thought if I kept sacrificing, they'd eventually love me back. I didn't reply. I was done justifying my boundaries to people who never respected them in the first place. I thought that was the end of it. But around 9 p.m., Dad sent one last message, cold, succinct, the final nail in the coffin they'd built themselves. Dad, don't come crawling back when you need something. We won't be here. I read it once. Then I typed, me, don't worry. I never will. And that was it. No more begging. No more explaining. No more pretending I was ever part of a family that only wanted me when my wallet was open. The next morning, I woke up to something I hadn't felt in years, peace. Not the nervous calm that comes when you're waiting for the next demand, real peace. No vibrating phone. No guilt-drenched voicemails. Just me, my coffee, and the quiet knowledge that for once, nobody was entitled to a piece of me I didn't want to give. I sat by the window with my laptop and did something unthinkable. I opened a savings spreadsheet. A real one. Not the perpetual disaster I used to keep, where every deposit was followed by an outgoing transfer to help the family. I was 34 years old, and it was the first time I looked at my finances and thought, this is mine. All of it. I made a list of goals I'd always postponed because of the next crisis. Start a retirement fund. Book a vacation for myself. Finally get a dog. It was almost embarrassing, how simple my dreams were compared to the things I'd sacrificed to keep everyone else comfortable. That afternoon, I called Mom and Dad's landlord, an older gentleman named Mr. Perkins who always sounded like he was one paperwork error away from retirement. Hello? He rasped. Hi, I said, voice steady. This is Nathan Cole. I just wanted to let you know I won't be covering the rent for 308 Rose Avenue anymore. My parents will need to arrange payment themselves. He paused. Ah, all right. Should I give them a deadline? I almost said something polite. Something like, I hope it works out. But then I remembered Dad's text, don't come crawling back. I'm sure they'll figure it out, I said. After I hung up, I felt like I'd finally set down a 100-pound backpack. And right on cue, my phone buzzed. A notification, blocked number voicemail. I didn't listen. Whatever final plea or threat or tearful performance they'd recorded, it wasn't mine to carry anymore. That evening, I met my friend Mason for drinks. He was the first person I'd ever admitted the whole story to. How does it feel? He asked, raising his glass. Like I walked out of a prison I didn't know I was in, I said. He nodded. I'm proud of you. I shrugged. It's weird. Part of me thought I'd feel empty. But all I feel is relieved. Good, he said. That means it was the right call. On the way home, I stopped at the little pet shop near my building. The clerk, a girl with bright purple hair and a name tag that said Kelsey, smiled when I lingered by the puppies. Thinking about taking one home? She asked. Yeah, I said. I think it's time. I walked back to my apartment and stood in the doorway, looking around the space I'd worked so hard to pay for. The furniture wasn't fancy. The art on the walls was just a handful of prints I'd ordered online. But it was mine. Nobody could threaten to take it away. Nobody could guilt me into giving it up. Before I went to bed, I sat at my kitchen table and wrote a letter, just for myself. Family isn't who shares your DNA. It's who respects your boundaries, shows up when you're hurting, and doesn't tally your worth in dollar signs. If they can't do that, they don't deserve access to your life. I folded it up and tucked it into my journal. The next morning, I woke up without dread in my chest. I made coffee, opened the curtains, and the relief wasn't loud or dramatic. It was just there. Quiet. Steady. Like finally breathing air I didn't have to pay for.